Hello. Nice to meet you. As yesterday evening, I'm today as happy as yesterday to see real people in the real life. So, but of course, greetings to the people who are connected via online. We are trained now, we are used to it, and we have a central topic for a discussion which I took from my presentation. This is how data center and internet exchange points, new business models, can help to meet cable's current and future digital demand. So we have some points to discuss, and I will refer to that points in the presentation. Just to let you know, so if I would be Deutsche Telekom or Orange, like I had in the presentation before, you would know us. Usually we are not so well known in the outside of Berlin or outside of the carrier scene. So I would like to give you some words about our company. This is a clear statement what we did in the last 15 years or nearly 20 years. So the company, which is also my company, it's a family business, is founded 25 years ago, and we survived several disruptive moments in this business. So I can see some faces I know very well for more than 20 years. So we all know what it's behind that sentence, but in Berlin, our role is to operate the data centers with the biggest network exchange and the crossing, the main crossing for data. This is our function in Berlin. These are some facts, so I will jump over the first slides, but just to let you know what our company is like, because we are hidden, or we shouldn't be too good to ourselves with words, but it's a truth that in Berlin, for this data center scene and for the carrier exchange points, we are a hidden champion somehow. So if you want to open a network pop in Berlin, there would be no real way to ask us. So you probably would land on our homepage and ask, okay, we need some collocation. And so we are a small company. If you take all together, we are 70 people living from the company, and we built the internet in Berlin. I will refer to that sustainability point in the presentation in the second half. So I will probably not use 20 minutes, but so that we have some more time to discuss the topics, because I think sustainability is very important. And there are things going on in this development of the data centers that should be an impulse for us to think about if it's correct. So I will refer to that later. But of course, we are used to operate data centers, and we started to operate remainings of the .com crash and learned a lot. So surprising, okay, no bypass in the UPS system, but built by major global players, data center, interesting. So that's part of our history, and that's how it looks at our sites. So you know how a data center looks on the inside. What's our asset is, we are 10 minutes from here, so maybe more minutes for you if you are watching online. It depends on where you are. Could be 100 minutes or 100,000 minutes, but from here it's 10 minutes. So yesterday we had some participants from the carrier meeting here having a walk. So my colleague Lydia prepared a carrier walk with some stations to go back into history, to see how was communication yesterday, how is it now. And so that's also an aspect of, if we build something, how can we make it sustainable so that it may be usable and useful in decades and not only in the next 5 years. That's a very important point. So we are in the heart of Berlin. Yes, very important papers. We have a certified ISMS, but I don't want to bore you. It's just important to be up to date with your ISMS today. ISO said 27001 is very important for us. So it's not only the paper at the wall, but it's we are living this ISMS, and we will see what's going on top of the certification in the future, just to have not only a nice paper at the wall, but to live the things that are in the system. And that was a hard learning, but it's bringing your company forward if you are a smaller company, maybe. So I would say, okay, do it, but be prepared to have enough time. You won't have anyway, but our customers and position in the market. So we are not very good in marketing, so you won't find some brochure papers, high quality print, etc. The thing is, our best marketing website is the peering database. Usually, if you are from the telco industries, you don't know that. The peering database is mandatory from or being there to have an entry there if you want to have a direct network connection with a large cloud provider. So you won't get a direct connect to AWS or to Microsoft Azure, which depends on the amount of data you want to exchange, if it's okay to have transit, which is expensive. So, but if you want to have a direct connect to these big cloud providers, you have to be in peering database. That's why it has some worth. So that's the list for Berlin. You can see that we, with only a few thousand square meters of data center, are in the #1 position of carrier density. In the truth, it's far over 100 autonomous systems being at our side, but not all are that public. So, and the second site is well known as NTT, formerly Shelter. It is 5 times the size of our site, but okay, so we are a bit proud of it to be the #1 here. And that's fun in our sense of making business, because our customers are as small as you may think, just with one head unit co-locating in the data center, but having maybe 1 terabit of traffic in that head unit, and a lot of local heroes. So that's something, if you are interested in contacts for Berlin or even in Germany or eastern part of Germany, many networks are not that public. So talk to us and we may connect you to the people who can give you the last mile for a better price, quicker, etc. And we are working together with the big names and the small companies, and that's very, very fun. And so what we are really doing, many of you checked that yesterday in the evening. We had some more visitors than we expected. I see faces that I have seen 10 hours ago or so. Okay. It wasn't until 4, but it went a bit longer than just 10 o'clock. But these pictures are from yesterday, from the GCCM opening at our side. So this is our office. In the blue hour, you can see people on the ramp, which is going upstairs to our equipment we need. So you see emergency power generators and cooling machines. So that's fun. And also we had some music, which is very, very important. We are connecting people with data, but to bring it all together, culture and data, that's cool. So this is our topic today, and I will pick some of the bullet points we prepared. So Carsten will host our discussion. Hopefully it is a discussion. So nice people. It's hard to discuss with you all. But so the highlighted points are the ones I will have a highlight on. and the gray point. So we are in Berlin. Maybe you noticed that Berlin is just in the middle of the eastern part of Germany. So I won't talk very much about subsea cables. Of course, we could put some into the Havel and the Spree and and going to the North Sea. It's so you can drive by boat from Berlin without interruption to the North Sea, no problem. But it would be expensive to have a subsea cable there. I will concentrate on the other points. I think this is important for our discussion. Probably we won't have much discussion about that point. I'm full of expectations what we'll discuss here, but of course we have some drivers of future bandwidth demand, and as you can hear in every talk here, it's of course it's cloud. Even the telcos are going into cloud. Just in the panel I had before, Deutsche Telekom offers an API in future, and also Orange is doing the same. And whatever your company name is, you won't participate in the market without an API and an open approach to offer the services to your customers. That's what I think. And of course, as some guy in our company has at this level, the devil is in the details. So it's he just changed some, but the devil is in the details. So cloud is not cloud. It's a very wide area to discuss. But of course, the underlying virtual infrastructure is the core that we will live on for the next decades. That is a disruption that has landed. It's just going on like this, and of course we have very much B2B usage, and of course the consumers. The technology is pretty similar. We are very happy that IP is a standard. We are transferring our data with, and so even the APIs connecting other services to the traditional networks, just like telco network with OSS, etc., is in the end a connector over IP layer, and that brings us all together, that we have the same language to connect our technology with, and that is driving the growth. And of course, so you know the future bandwidth hungry customers. There are some technology drivers. So 5G is more than LTE plus or 4G plus. Because it offers many options within the protocol to have a much better usage of the network. So it's about quality, it's about better options to share networks, and that is a driver, of course. And this is together with the so-called Industry 4 technologies, IoT devices, which are coming in the mobile space and which are coming at the home automation sites. This is bringing huge traffic, and as you can see on the influence of the data centers, there are two things I have this mark on. If we think on more bandwidth, it's not only the bandwidth. We will have much more packets in the networks in the upcoming decades, and that makes influence. So because every router has to decide what's going on with this packet, and it's a difference if you have 10 terabit of data with video on demand, which is large packets and consuming a lot of bandwidth, but the router only has to decide in the beginning of the package what to do with this package. And it's a massive difference if you have 10 billion packets per second with small IoT information, just temperature from that home, humidity from that industrial machine, or think about construction sites where we have local 5G networks with an optimization approach for the machines driving there. So we will have much more sensor data, and we will have much more decisions made by AI to decide which data should we collect and store and which data is not worth to collect. So we can't collect any data that we generate for the next decade. So that would be dangerous. So just imagine we would have any furniture from our ancestries the last 500 years ago. That would not work. So we have to think about what's going on with the data. And of course, the IXPs, Internet Exchange points, are handling a lot of this data, and their role changed. It's on the next slide, but they are the connectors to the big cloud networks. So this is one of the slides. It's a PDF. Now I'm sorry for that. So the sustainability aspect on the right side is so important. What you see is our building where we are in, a photograph of 2002 and a photograph from 2017. Now it's a bit different. So I have this air picture from 2017. Now we expanded it on the left side with more climatization and emergency generators. But between that pictures, there was nothing on the roof. So things were built. This was the largest network hub in Berlin in 2002, but all companies went down in the .com crash, or .com crash 1. So you have to think about, there is an infrastructure, should we keep it? And thinking about, can we reuse it? I have also an example of a reusage. So we had to build everything again. So there were 6,000 square meters of data centers within the building, removed during the years and then rebuilt. And we have some examples in Berlin that haven't been built for long term. And so SEC-Shelter in the Porsteinstraße had to be removed because the contract for the space was not long enough. So that's a problem. That's what I mean. If we do something, or if we build a big data center somewhere, let's see that it remains for the next 50 years and not only for 5 or 10 years. We have one example here on the left side. It's the formerly Bahn data center, Deutsche Bahn, very large company, several 100,000 employees, a lot of traffic. They built their data center from 2010 to 2011. And it's not, it hasn't been in use for a decade. It's not 10 years old. It was an investment of about 30 million or 35 million euros. And Deutsche Bahn moved their capacity to AWS. That's a big story in the German newspapers. Everybody can read it. So, but of course, the IT capacity, which was inside that building, is now at the AWS data center. It's in the cloud, and it's good that this facility lives on. And there is a reusage of it. So Penta Infra took it, and now they are refilling it with single customers. It's just a co-location data center now. So it is good that it has a new life. But as my question is, what will happen to the hyperscaler? This is not a hyperscaler site. This is 8 megawatts. This is medium size, which is okay. 8 megawatts is a small site. So we are at Lützelstraße, we're at 4 megawatts. In our second site, we are at 2.5. And in this site, you have 8 megawatts. Around Berlin, several investors are building sites with 50 megawatts plus. So what will be with them in 10, 20, 30, 50 years if a site with only 8 megawatts hadn't alive for 10 years or has now another life? But at 50 or 100 megawatt sites, I'm not sure what there will be in 30 years. That's just a point I want to give a point on. Yeah, okay, we'll go on. So the IXPs changed, and the IXPs are not offering only peering, so the data exchange between autonomous systems, but the IXPs are for a while now offering layer 2 network connectivity. So they're expanding, they're searching for new business models. You know, the DKICs expanding in Dubai, in Marseille, and in other cities, but the DKICs found Leipzig, which is pretty close to Berlin. It's only 1 hour, 20 minutes, and DKICs opened a point of presence there. So the exchange points are looking for locations to handle traffic, and this is a new business model which grabs into the carriers domain, in the classical carriers. And meanwhile, it's massive. So Megaport, NLIX, etc. They are really present in very, very many places and offering their services. And so that's good for this data center because there's low connectivity, only 3 or 4 fibers, but B6 is opening their APOP. And so this is a logo from the B6. I've been there in the board for 6 years. And that is one story that fits to the new partnership models because B6 is partnering with DKICs, and this is one of the possibilities where IXPs who are alone standing can partner with others, and other models are that existing IXPs, just like I think it was ANSIX, helped some IXPs in South America, and others helped some IXPs establishing in the Near East to build a functional IXPs, because this is a bit tricky. You have a lot of network security, etc. And in the data center business, there are several models who are offered by investors. So I know these kind of models. Meanwhile, and this will be the future, that there will be a cooperation and a share of cost and interest. Yeah, as we have no sea cables in Berlin, but I know in Oman there are some. I just have 3 slides about that theme. This is telegeography. I'm sorry, I will prepare that slide with a source, telegeography. And this was the sea cable landscape in 1997, 25 years ago. This is 2022. So I had one slide between. It's away. Okay.
This means that we are doing good business.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the landscape today, and it's going on. So this is the perspective for 2026. What's interesting that in Russia there is some cabling on the north, going around on the north. That's interesting, and so this is sustainable from my perspective, because none of these cables will be switched off ever. This is sustainability, and also the landing sites are, of course, sites that are built some kind of forever. So you will need that in the globalized world and to interact. So that's a very good development. It's and if you go into the geography, you may, it's the last slide, Carsten. Yeah. You may switch through the years. So, look, panel discussion.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay.
And
only 5 minutes over.
Let's give a round of applause to Steffen, and I'd like to invite you to come over and sit between Huda and me.
Thank you. Yeah.
I guess this can be switched off now so that we can see Saurabh in a better way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's me to take over. Good morning to all those being westbound of us. Good afternoon to all of us here in the room and being online, but in the same time zone. And good evening to all those being eastbound from us. For data centers and internet exchange providers, new business models can help to meet cable's current and future digital demand. This is, Steffen has explained it already. This is what we're going to discuss for, say, the next 30 minutes, maybe a bit more. Let's see. With a couple of sub-items, future consumption trends with off-bandwidth hungry customers, looking into new business models, next generation planning. In the digital era, new partnership models, the relationship between subsea cable operators and data centers, and last but not least, surveillance security and personal data privacy, new challenges. With me here on the panel are to my right-hand side, utmost right-hand side, is Ms. Huda Al-Gabshi. She's Senior Manager Capacity and Submarine Cables at Omantel. Then, secondly, we would have Susanna Calvo. She's a Director of Product and Partner Management at Unsere Grüne Glasfaser, which is a German company's name for a fiber provider, a fiber carrier within Germany. Unfortunately, Ms. Calvo cannot be with us because she felt sick earlier today, this morning, and so she had to cancel her presence on a very last moment. We wish her well. Third, we have Steffen David in an alphabetical order, the presenter of our keynote. Steffen is the CEO at IPB. And last but not least, in an alphabetical order, we have online with us from the United Arab Emirates, Mr. Saurabh Kharma. He's Senior Director ICT at Frost & Sullivan. My name is Carsten Schiefner. I'm a consultant for internet infrastructure. So, future consumption trends, that was one of the, not necessarily, I'm not going down on this necessarily in that particular order. When we prepared this, there was sort of a very lively discussion went off already, and I hope this is going to be carried on for this event right now. Prediction is always complicated, in particular if it concerns the future. So what would your predictions in terms of bandwidth growth? Is there a distinction being made, or is a distinction needed between consumer versus enterprise needs in this regard? And what might be drivers, but is also to be considered inhibitors? With that sort of set of questions, I'd like to hit it off, and would like to start with Huda first, if I may.
Thank you so much. I'm not sure. Are you able to hear me? Is this working? Or you are able? Okay.
Okay, Saurabh, you can hear us.
Saurabh,
okay.
You can hear us?
Okay.
Good. So regarding the consumption, I think, I believe that it will continue increasing. As we already saw during the pandemic, the number of capacity required is increasing significantly. Previously, we were so happy if we sell 10 gig level capacity, but now even 100 gig, we are not hearing very much a lot from the customers. It's more than fiber pair and sometimes in teras as well. So it will continue because there are a lot of new technologies coming in the scene. 5G, IoT, as Stefan already said. So it is a critical situation for us as a wholesaler, where we need to accommodate this needs by the consumer by having the best business model between us as submarine and data center as well.
Okay. Maybe you know. Then I'd like to look at. Then I'd like to look at Saurabh. Would you like to chip in with what you see from your perspective at Frost & Sullivan?
Yep, absolutely. Thanks for the question, and thanks for giving me the opportunity. I believe of all the panelists, I'm the only outlier here, joining virtually. So once again, good afternoon, everyone. So yes, I definitely would like to add. I mean, if you look at the consumption trends that we have seen over the years in the current scenario, I mean, we had done some recent analysis based on that. What we had seen, typically, on an average, I would say the bandwidth consumption is growing at roughly around 30% year on year, which is massive. And this goes across the board, right from the enterprise segments as well as consumer segment. I mean, if you put everything put together, it's roughly growing at around 30% year on year growth. So which is quite massive. And like what I mentioned, they were days then 10 gig used to be quite a lot. And now we have times wherein even 100 gig is not sufficient at all. So yeah, those are just my 2 cents on that particular question.
Would you see any kind of a distinction needed, a needed distinction between a classic consumer needs in terms of like eyeball network providers and so forth, and enterprise needs in terms of the bandwidth demands that both say fractions as users of bandwidth would ask for? Is that something you would like to just make a distinction between?
I think there is no clear-cut distinction. I would say yes. The usage and the reason and the rationale and the drivers for demand could be quite different. They are definitely very different in consumer and enterprise segment. But at the end of the day, the enterprise are basically catering to consumers directly or indirectly to an extent, right? So it is sort of very, very closely, both the segments are still, from a demand perspective, from a consumption behavior perspective, they're very, very closely tied together. But yeah, if you look at purely from a consumption perspective of, let's say, in consumer segment, I would say, I mean, globally, if you look at the bandwidth consumption, almost 60% of the bandwidth is typically used in consumer segment for, video, basically, online media content consumption, basically. That is where the 60% of the entire bandwidth gets consumed by the consumer segment. But if you go to the enterprise segment, again, the needs are very different. And I think, especially with some of the emerging technologies like IoT, yes, IoT has been running on 4G and some of the previous technologies as well. But I think with 5G coming in, I think the consumption of bandwidth and the need for more bandwidth in the enterprise segment is likely to grow, exponentially, I would say, primarily because of 5G. And then at the same time, there would be other use cases as well. I mean, we are in an age then we are also talking about, concepts like edge computing as well. There are quite a lot of use cases that have already been deployed globally as well as in the region as well. So I'm based in Middle East in Dubai, and in the region as well, I have seen quite a lot of cases of edge computing as well. And now, and again, from that perspective, there is going to be a lot of demand for bandwidth consumption in use cases for edge computing as well. So I don't know if I sort of diverted a little bit, but yeah, that is how I would say, dissect or look at different drivers for demand between these 2 segments.
Okay, thank you very much. Turning to you once more, is that something you would actually copy or regard from basically the same viewpoint or what Saurabh has just said, or would you have a different angle on the needs and demands of consumers versus enterprise sectors and markets?
I think we are aligned. The thing is, most of the demand are now generated by the OTT. Mm-hmm. We can tell that the sector is already led by OTT. So from our perspective, we had we get to a point where we need to really cooperate or work closely with OTTs in order to be able to fulfill the consumer and the enterprise demand. And as Saurabh said, now you cannot really differentiate between consumer and enterprise because Previously, students were going to school. Now it's everything online. Working becomes online. So the number of variables is really increasing, and you need to have the proper collaboration with the right entity in order to fulfill the requirements or the need of the community.
Thank you. You've mentioned that already. Technologies. What technologies are being used right now? What are actually being wished for? I mean, if you could write your wish list, what would be on your wish list? That also goes to you, Saurabh, as well as to Steffen. And what might be drivers for a bandwidth-hungry society, and what is actually still to be considered inhibiting to serve on this particular demand from consumers as well as enterprises in a certain market, in a certain society? That was a bunch of questions, I know.
Yes.
Let's start with the wish list maybe first.
I think everybody has his own wish list. So everything will be automated. Everything will be in cloud, where new technologies will come, and it will not stop. The development of technology, it will not stop, because the human dreams are really high. So development will continue, and we need to fulfill these requirements since we are tech people.
Would you? I mean, I know that you're sort of like scouting technology even. So I would assume that you have a wish list as well.
So how much time do we have?
Cut it please as short as
I
possible.
took some more minutes in my note, but I think it's one outstanding point on my wish list, which is it's only one. It's a lucky guy. It's more awareness for secure communication, because if the security is disrupted, we all have a problem.
Okay.
So security rules, and so therefore 5G is a good idea, as you can build segmented networks much better than before. But if you have an insecure API connectivity, just imagine major telcos are using same technology. We had different effects in the past, but that is a main point, which is of course part of technology. It has to be implemented in the systems, and not only be software, but this is securing our business, because we are all dependent, and not all we in the telco and cloud and carrier community, but also the people using the services.
Society
so this is the outstanding point.
Understood. Thank you. Saurabh, the number one item, the first item on your wish list for technology, what would that be?
I think I would agree with what Stephen mentioned about the security part of it. And I think at the same time, what I would probably add to it is the quality of service as well. Yeah, that's the other thing which I would definitely add to my wish list. So yeah, mine would be a bit more extended, not just one. There would be two items in that case. Okay,
excellent. Let's silently move to say the next two agenda points or sub-agenda points I've mentioned earlier, as well as Steffen did in his presentation. Looking into new business models and next generation planning in a digital area. How would you, or respectively the companies behind you, actually do explore new business opportunities? I mean, what is your your approach to discover what's around the second corner after the first corner when it comes to technology and developments, and actually preparing your company, your respective company, to make the company fit for what's coming sometime in the future? be it 5 years or even 50 years, as Steffen has pointed out. Yeah, as in we spoke about cloud business, video on demand, the OTTs, in particular 5G, and the totally different traffic patterns issued on the network by IoT devices. So how do you do your planning? That is like the overarching question and the topic.
Right. So I would say, it doesn't really fall directly under my purview as such. So Frost & Sullivan, we are basically a management consulting firm. We support clients on their strategy and go-to-market activities, developing the business model. Okay. Now, I would rather flip it and say that how do we support our clients on, guiding them on their technology roadmap, or, identifying the right business model. I would say, on a case-to-case basis, depending on what technology we are looking at. I think in most cases, clients would typically look at one or two very, very important parameters. If it's an investment decision, they would primarily look at the financial metric, things like IRR, so on and so forth. And typically they would look at the ROI cycle as well. Okay, that's more from a business perspective of it. Okay, and then at the same time, when it's a pure play technology investment, okay, I think one of the very fundamental way when I talk to clients, and they say that, oh, let's take an example. They're looking at things like security, for example. Okay, now most CIOs would say, oh, this is $1 million investment. What do I do, and how do I get the management buy-in? And I always tell them that don't look at the cost of investing into it. Look at the cost of not investing into it. What would happen if something goes wrong? Or let's say even if it is not security, any other investment area. I mean, if you're not investing into technology now, then you are basically falling behind from the rest of the market. By the time you decide you would be investing, you would have already missed the bus. So I don't know if that really answered the question, but that is how typically, I approach and I work with clients. Yeah.
I found it particularly interesting because obviously you're not an operator of any kind of like internet infrastructure by yourself, but Frost & Sullivan obviously gives crucial information to its customers coming from that particular sector of the market. So without say, how should I put it? Being completely detached from what's going on, possibly you couldn't be giving good advice to a customer. So so I found this interesting to see how you would see as a consulting company, how you would see the development of technology. Thank you. Turning to Omantel now, why is clear. How would you do your say? Develop your business, looking for new opportunities, looking for new business models, and what's the general planning process at Omantel, if you can disclose the stores?
Yeah, thank you so much. So I'm coming from GCC, from Oman especially, and we are well known of oil. And we considered our new oil is the data. So we are really investing a lot on this. Plus, one of our main objective is to bring the best customer experience. So how we do this, we are bringing most of the content provider in Oman, as well as we cooperate with one of the biggest data center entities, which is Equinix. So we built, it was already mentioned in your slide, we had a joint venture with Equinix, where we built the first neutral data center in Oman. Basically it was a very new idea within the region. So accepting neutrality and open access, like we had a long discussion with the government in order to bring this alive. But fortunately, it was a very successful project. Now we have Facebook in Oman, Google as well, and Amazon. So to answer your question, the best business model is to connect those most important entity in one ecosystem. And the most important thing from data center perspective is low latency and redundancy from submarine perspective as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're
very
welcome.
well understood. Last but not least, I said it earlier that knowing you're into scouting, what's around the next corner and even the one after the next corner. So how do you do business planning, striving for new opportunities at IPB?
I think it's pretty easy referring to the transformation process we all are going through, going into API connected systems. We have all gone part of that way, coming from monolithic systems to more open systems, but this transformation is just ongoing. So we have a lot of pain there, but that's the future, because it gives us the ability to interconnect systems which have a very good performance for a special purpose to another system which has another special purpose with a very good performance, which would never talk together within one software, or you would need to go to a very, very large software company to have a software which includes both and component 3 and 4. So this is expensive, and in the past you only could handle this being a large company. In the future, this is a possibility to have not only large companies offering APIs with services, but very good small company, very good small software components interconnecting with the APIs together. And this is a chance for the big companies and the smaller companies also. So you can build much more reliable infrastructures, because you don't have to go to a large cloud provider which offers special services, but you may interconnect smaller cloud services and therefore not being on the radar of attackers, for example. So interconnecting the services as everything is going into an as a service world, whatever as a service, everything as a service. And that's an opportunity for the bigger ones and for the smaller ones also. And that's ruling every business which is digital, and everything will be digital in the future.
Okay, thank you. Moving slowly into a new subtopic with this new partnership models. We briefly spoken about that one as well, in particular you, Steffen, in your presentation. And the relationship between subsea cable operators, that is Omantel in particular, and data centers with Equinix. And I'd like to bring internet exchange points into that equation as well. Having sort of like a triangle, as I put it here, like a partnership triangle between the cable operators, the data center operators, and the internet exchange point operators, because they're sort of, as you said, in the same ecosystem, or actually they form an ecosystem, and as much as I would see it, also sort of depending on each other, because if you have a data center where there's no fiber coming in, then possibly it's not a data center really, and if you have fiber with no data centers at both ends, then possibly you have fiber in the ground, but that doesn't serve any. Anyhow, during the preparation, we spoke about open access, and I found it particularly interesting because obviously there are essentially two main understandings and totally disjunct understandings about open access when it comes to fiber here in Germany, and from what the situation in Oman or the GCCs in general is when you think open access. Maybe the two of you would start to explain a little what your understanding, start with Steffen first, about open access in particularly the German market, and then switch it to Buda, and last but not least, it would be Saurabh giving us an idea about Frost and Sullivan's take on open access and when it comes to fiber. Short, of course.
So we have a lack of fiber in Germany. We still have. I see people who are working very, very good, doing a very good job in Germany. If everybody would do such a good job, like people sitting in the audience here, we would be fibered over the years. But so it's open access is if someone has a fiber in a place, others may have access to that fiber, and so that is just a question of being economic, so economics of scale and sharing some cost. That is an understanding of open access in Germany, and we found out that we have different perspective on this open access word.
So yes, thank you, Uda. What's your point of view when it comes to open access? In particular, like from, as I said, from an Untitled point of view, or if you like to broaden up this a little, is there a common understanding about open access in the GCC and the Gulf countries world?
Okay, first of all, this is like a new thing within GCC. We initiated as Untitled, and we keep fighting and internally and externally with our competitor and our partners within the region. So we need to classify carrier neutrality and open access. So when we started our relationship with Equinix, we insist that both should be already applicable in our data center. For carrier neutrality, all ISPs in Oman will be already there. So this is carrier neutrality. And for open access, we have so far we have one cable who was directly connected to the data center, and all the consortium members are able to access it.
So in that instance, it's say the data center itself is sort of closely located to the sea, and the landing station is essentially within the data center. Is that my understanding?
Yeah, we extend the cable into the data center.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So essentially, open access is it's kind of funny. If I understand this correctly, open access actually has two ends. So one end is what you're referring to is towards the data centers,
yes.
And the other end is what you're essentially have been referring to is towards the customers / enterprises, companies, like users, essentially, really. Yeah. Okay, interesting. Anything you would like to chip in here, Saurabh, to open access and challenge that?
Yeah, certainly. See, from a carrier neutrality perspective, it has been here in the region for some time now. I mean, I was just listening to Huda. She was mentioning about the partnership with Equinix. Equinix has been in the UAE for quite some time now, and they have got a carrier neutral thing as well set up here as well. But I think as far as open access is concerned, it's definitely a great concept. Okay, but purely from a cost perspective, from benefit perspective for the wholesaler operator as well as for the consumers as well in the enterprise segment too, it's a win-win for everyone. But I think the tricky and the more difficult part is the actual execution, is to get all the parties on the table, shake hands, and then execute it. That is a very, very difficult part, which is why, you would see that it has not been very, very easy to execute or successful in some parts of the world. For example, if you look at some of the Asian markets, it's just not there yet. So that's what I would say. I would definitely add. But yeah, from a regional perspective, from Middle East perspective, yeah, we are getting there, I would say.
Okay, thank you. Thinking about internet exchange point operators, and Steffen has mentioned this in his presentation as well, that the German DKIX actually operates or instigated, let me, something in between the internet exchange point in Dubai. So I just wonder what your take on it is in terms of what is a good model, what is a preferable model in terms of is one internet exchange point brackets operator per country, is that enough, or should you have as many as possible? The more the merrier, so to say. Is in internet exchange, and secondly, is an internet exchange point driven by the local community a thing that needs is to be wished for, or are the model with the DKIX operating to Dubai internet exchange point, these kind of like, I would call them flown in internet exchange point operators, is that is that a better model, or are they actually equal to each other, and it doesn't really matter as long as packets are being successfully exchanged between various autonomous systems present at an internet exchange point?
Yeah,
Again,
I think in my opinion, if you really have to compare these, I think there is no direct. I mean, yes, we can obviously compare the models, but to compare these two different models, you would also have to look at the attributes or the drivers that would help you decide which is the right model. Okay, so I don't think there is a clear-cut winner here between these two models, because these models, the adoption of these model would depend on a lot of other factors. So for example, whether, if the question is, if you want to look at, let's say, whether one internet exchange is enough for, let's say, a country or a region and all those things, it's very difficult to say, because it would depend on the geography, the complexity, the terrain as well to an extent, and most importantly, the consumption patterns itself. What is the demand that we have currently, and how do we foresee that would change over a period of time? So I think the consumption pattern is probably one of the major drivers that would essentially define which is the right model to look at. And obviously, in addition to that, there would be other things like investment, the cost, and all of those factors as well. So I think it's difficult to clearly say that, this model is better than the other one clearly. That's what my opinion would be, but I'm sure, Huda would have Huda and Stephen would have a different opinion on that.
Thank you, Saurabh. And turning back to my right-hand side, any takers for this, again, bunch of questions? Maybe Huda?
Yes.
Thank you.
So in Untitled, we, that first of all, the communication hub was in Europe. So we really break the reliance on Europe by bringing the content over 85% are localized in Oman. But again, as Saurabh said, this is not enough, because if you compare the population or the geographic location of the GCC, we don't have enough eyeballs. Like if we compare to Europe or to US. So I believe, this is my personal opinion, that if we want to reach the content, then we should have a seamless interconnected between all the internet exchange within the region, in order to make this region as the new hub of communication.
Okay. Thank you. Anything to add, maybe? I don't know.
No, I'm not free. I've been at B6 for 6 years. I have my very special. But maybe just one point. So I'm still a fan of local internet exchange points that are like an island and that are isolated. So you may not interconnect them too much, because if this goes down, you have a problem again, and that's again security. It's not about security of data transfer or data security, but it's reliability of the networks. So the exchange points are doing a very good job, but if you interconnect them too much and there's a problem, then you have a big problem. And that's
thank you. Which essentially brings me to the last sub-agenda bullet point. Surveillance, security, and personal data privacy, new challenges. And you've mentioned security for the second time already. And so this first question I'm having goes to you. What would you, as a data center operator, see as challenges in detail when it comes to surveillance, security, and personal data? And also, are they in your day-to-day operations, in your day-to-day business life, are they seen as a burden, or rather an advantage when it comes, in particular, comes to competition? Or is it a bit of both, actually, which also sort of implies a level playing field? But
short.
You can take your time. You are the expert in this.
No, I don't know. So we need surveillance in our data centers, of course. We all data center operators need camera surveillance to avoid sabotage and to be sure what happened, that you can reconstruct events, for example. That's very important. I'm not sure if you need camera surveillance in every public place. So there are systems that give you a very good impression of of what's going on there, how many people are there, what are they buying without having face recognition, for example. So meanwhile, we are beyond camera pictures and face recognition because we have person counting systems and other mechanisms that don't need surveillance aspects in a personal political aspect. So I would prefer to go beyond in the AI systems, which don't need face recognition, but which generates data that's useful to generate more business, even though.
Thank you. Understood. And Uda.
Yes, regarding security.
Surveillance security and personal data privacy challenges you would see as an. Oh, jeez.
We're done. For me, from submarine perspective, these are one of the main important driver for a submarine focused company to like this is an attraction point, whether it is security, energy saving, and DC power as well. So there are multiple of drivers that attract me as a submarine company or even OTT from OTT perspective to come and link to this data center. So I believe it is very important.
It is important. Okay. Any take from your side, Saurabh? In terms of either one or all three of them, surveillance, security, and personal data privacy as a challenge?
No, not really. I think if I'll say something, I would just be repeating what Huda and Stephen have already covered. So I'll give it a pass, this particular question.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that maybe that's possibly is our final round already, because we're a bit over time already. If you think about the fact that different countries and regions would have different regulation, different regulatory regime, is it necessary to sort of level this kind of playing field on a regional level, or even on a global level, or is that not important at all, or is it something in between?
No, I think to start with, definitely it should be at least at a regional level. It should be a level playing field. I mean, what's happening in EU is a classic example, and there is a lot of learning that other regions can take from them. And I do see that, you know, in the Middle East, or more specifically, I would say GCC itself, you know, there are talks, there is a thought process behind it to move in a similar direction, which is fantastic. So I definitely feel that at a regional level, it definitely has to be there. You know, it's a win-win for everyone, for every country, I would say.
Okay, thank you. Turning to my right-hand side again, what is your take on the need to striking out any wrinkles in terms of like regulatory regimes? Is there a need for sort of like a harmonization, as we definitely would see it here within the European Union, for example? Is that helpful? Is it necessary, or just you couldn't care less? Is that could also be a take on it, as in like we don't care if we continue to operate our subsea cables and yeah.
If I'll speak about Amantel and Oman, it is very important to have the blessing of our regulatory, because it is a regulated market in the end. But we need to also to show them the importance of having, for example, neutral data center, of having like we started with less than two submarine cables, and now we are close to 20 submarine in 2024. Close to 20 submarine cables. This will not happen. Yes, it's been done by the effort of Amantel team, but it will not happen if the government or the regulator is not supporting us.
Okay, interesting. Thank you. And last but not least, Steffen, maybe a particular viewpoint on the power regulations within the European Union, because maybe telco relations are sort of harmonized to some extent. I understand that when it comes to like the source for data center operations, which obviously is electricity, that might not be as harmonized in terms of add-ons, fees, for example, across Europe as it could be wished for. So maybe you just want to put on some words in terms of the regulation scheme when it comes to power.
As we have, I'm sure that in Germany, so we are in Germany, and we have an outstanding position in regulatory surcharges that we have to, so taxes, etc. I would very much appreciate a regulatory unity, and so it would be difficult to have a worldwide unity. That is not possible. So I'm happy that we have some human rights that are accepted worldwide in the most countries, but we won't have something like that. Every country has a special role, and Germany is special within the European Union in this case. So if Germany would harmonize with the other European countries, that would be great.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe that is the first item on your wish list. I don't know. The second wish list.
I'm not a politician because that's.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for having attended this little session, which comes to a close now, a little bit over time. 5 minutes, if I see that correctly. Thank you so much, Huda. Thank you, Steffen.
Thank you.
Thank you also, Saurabh. And once again, we wish Susanna well and a speedy recovery,
yes,
which brings this session to a close now. Thank you very much for having been here, and have a good day and good remaining part of this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.